Hey, what's up guys? Sandworld here with a new video for you guys. We're going to be talking a little bit about the low end. We're going to be talking mainly about theory, so there's not going to be much showing in this video. However, towards the end, I'm going to show you guys a few tricks that you guys can do in order to get a good low end. Okay guys, so before we get started, I also wanted to mention that I have a new sound bank out. It's the Future and Bass House one that I released yesterday. It has 75 thumbs up on YouTube, so I know that you guys really like them. So if you guys want to support those sounds, you can always buy them off the Evil Sounds website that links you to Sellfy, which is my distributor. They don't charge me that much, and they're pretty much great to work with if you ever want to sell stuff. But as always, guys, when you buy a sound bank, you guys get the sounds and stuff, and it also acts as a donation towards my channel. And thanks to the sound banks I've been selling, Silent One Revolution Volume 1, Volume 2, which were some of the best sellers. I swear to God, if I were to have put them on Beatport or Producer Loops, because I didn't put those two up there, I honestly think those two would be the best selling Silent One sound banks of all time. And I'm relating this to my sound bank that I released with Shockwave, which was the very first sound bank I released, which is the '1 spot for the most sold Silent One sound bank of all time, which is fucking crazy because I released that like in 2014 or 2013, and Silent One has been out since '08. So imagine that, a sound bank that got released 4 years after a lot of them, and it's one of the best sellers. That's really crazy. But anyways, guys, those when you buy it, those donations I use it to go back towards the channel, and it also helps me a lot with my daily life, which is also awesome, and I can't be thankful enough for you guys. Now let's get started with the video. So guys, the first thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is acoustic panels. Now some of you guys might be like going, fuck that, I want to see some fucking compression being done and all this stuff. No, the reason we talk about acoustic panels is because people are always putting importance onto what kind of monitors to get. They're always like, oh, I want to get some Adams, I want to get some Genelecs, fuck that, and some KRKs and whatnot, and people put so much importance into this, but they don't put any importance into the room they're producing in. So the first tip that I'm going to give you guys is to treat your room. That's going to be the best tip I think anyone can ever give you, especially when it comes to mixing and mastering your own tracks. Now, what do acoustic panels do for those of you guys who don't know? Acoustic panels are pretty much these panels you see along my wall, and this one's kind of falling off. But I have a big one there, a very fat one, and this one is more skinny. The fat ones are meant to get the lower frequencies, while the skinny ones are better with the higher mids and higher frequencies. Now, why do I have them in certain positions or whatnot? To just give you guys a little quick recap of it is because when sound comes out of my monitors, it kind of expands, it develops. All right, so monitors right here. So pretty much there's this theory that if you get a mirror and you run it along a wall and you can see one of the monitors, that's a reflective point. What that means is when sound comes out of the monitor, it's gonna hit that point in that wall. And what happens is when the sound hits the wall, it bounces off the wall and it keeps going, bouncing until it fully develops. Now, what is the problem with that? The problem with that is that if you're getting, you're sitting in front of your monitors and the monitors pretty much putting the sound at you. Imagine some sound waves hitting here, sound waves from over here hitting here, because it's reflecting from the top of your room from every direction. So what happens is you start getting phase cancellation. You start getting cancellation of certain stuff, and you won't be able to pick up certain things that you would in a treated room. So that's why it's very important you have a treated room, because it makes your room very neutral. That way you can make a song that sounds pretty much good in any system. Now, what if you don't have this stuff? What if you can't afford acoustic panels because you're 12, 13, or you just live in a country that it's really hard to get this stuff because you're going to have to ship it out and it's going to cost you way more than someone that were to live in the States or in a populated area? Then what you can do is you can correlate between certain locations. What I mean by this is, like, let's say you produce a song in your room and you do a mix down. Go hear it in your car stereo. Go hear it in another car stereo that might be better or worse, or go hear it in the kitchen in your mom's laptop speakers or your desktop speakers, whatnot. You want to hear it in every position available, and you want to pick things up. And if there's some stuff that you hear in all of them that's wrong, then you want to fix it in your room once you come back. Now, that's going to help you get the best results, and acoustic panels aren't necessarily needed in that situation, but it does save a lot of time because you don't need to go around doing that. All right, so that's going to be the first tip, guys. And if we look at acoustic panels, they do run a lot. They're about 50 each. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Around 10. That's $500 almost. And I bought these for 100 off Craigslist off some guy who made his own. And he told me he made his own via fiberglass. So I think it's like do-it-yourself acoustic panels. And you can buy this, which is the Owen Corning's pack. So pretty much inside the acoustic panels is going to be one of these guys, and what they do is they're really good. They absorb frequency really good. It's fiberglass, so make sure not to touch it that much with your clothes. It gets really sticky. I remember when I first got them. But if you notice, this costs $67. You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 around there that you guys can see there. And you know, here we have the NRC ratings, which is how good these things are at pretty much, you know, absorbing these type of frequencies. Now. This is the most inexpensive way of doing it, because then, you know, you can get more bang for your buck and you can pretty much shoot the whole fucking room. Now, the places you're going to want to treat are going to be places where you're sitting. So if I'm sitting here, I want to treat the right side of my wall to the left of me and make sure it's at the same level as my ears. I want to treat the back walls, and then I want to treat the ceiling. And in my ceiling, I do have some foam to kind of help with that. Now, for those of you guys who are going to tell me, why don't you just get foam? The reason we don't get foam is because foam has been already proven to not be as effective as acoustic panels. And to be honest, for the price you're paying for acoustic foam, it's not worth the money. Acoustic panels give you a way better treatment. They're a little bit more pricier, but I feel like it's totally worth it. All right, guys, so that's going to be the first one. Now, the second one is going to be pretty much the theory that you cannot have a big kick or a big bass. You have to have either a big kick and a small bass, or a big bass and a small kick. Now, what do I mean by this? All right, guys, so I'm going to be using kind of like the mainstream sound for you guys for this, because that's pretty much what most of you guys are into, according to stats. So if we were to bring up, let's say, Silent 1, and we were to load up, you know, just one of my sound banks here. And if we were to load up pretty much, you know, let's say like a bass. Like that. Now, a big bass is going to be a bass like in progressive house, where you have the bass pretty much playing the whole way through. That's a big bass. So in that instance, you cannot have a kick with a big tail. It's not going to work. Now, I don't want you guys getting confused between kicks, you know, big room kicks and big kicks, okay? A big room kick is a small kick with a big bass that has been distorted. So you hear the initial click, like the dome part is the bass. So that already has a small kick. Now, most of EDM, most of the mainstream stuff of EDM, you know, like fucking progressive house and stuff, usually utilizes a very small tight kick and then utilizes a big bass. Now, if we're gonna do this right now, we're gonna put like pretty much just a normal standard progression here. We're gonna use the F key because it's easier to find kicks for the F. All right, so there we have a bass line, and now this would be considered a big bass line because the bass is always going to be present. All right, so now when we bring that theory into effect, which is you cannot have a big kick and a big bass. You can either have one of both. That means you can have either a big bass and a small kick, or a big kick and a small bass. So in this instance, we're going to have a big bass and a small tight kick. So the way we're going to do this is we need to find a very tight, good kick, and we just need to get one that is in key. So this kick is very tight, very punchy, and if we want to look at it, pretty much here is the kick. Now, what we want to have is we want to have a kick that's really not going to take up much of the bar. And as you guys can see, this kick is kind of taking up a lot of the bar. So one of the things we can do is we can use a fade to kind of mellow this part out. because all we really want is that initial boom, and that's pretty much what attracted me to this kick, was that initial boom. So the tail is not really helping much, so we're gonna kind of get rid of it. All right, so there we have. Now what we're gonna do is sidechain it. Now this is using the theory. Remember, you cannot have a big kick and a big bass. It's never gonna work, and that's mainly because the low end. The best way to explain this is, if you guys have ever seen this frequency spectrum, the low end is literally the smallest portion of it. The low end is considered 200 and below, so it's between 200 and 35 or 40, because that's where the sub bass is a little bit more audible and it's more felt. Anything below that is overkill. Now, if you guys look at everything else, like the mid lows and the mid highs, it goes from 200 to 1,000. That's 800 frequency difference. 1,000 to 10,000. Once you get to the higher frequencies, you can see there's much more freedom in those higher areas than in the low bass. In the low bass, we only have 200% difference, not even 200, more like 170. So we need to fit the kick and the bass there, and they're like one of the most powerful things in any track out there. So that's what makes mixing the bass, the low end, very difficult. That's why we cannot have a big bass and a big kick, because it's never gonna work. There's just not enough room. So we as producers have to pretty much go, okay, then we need to compensate some way. So you can either have a big bass and a big kick, or a big bass and a small kick, or a big kick and a small bass. That's pretty much the key thing you want to take out of this, because again, I already showed you guys the difference between the low and the low end isn't that big. There's not that much room, so we just gotta get crazy with it. Now, another thing we could do is put a mono on this. Because you always want your kick and your bass to almost be kind of mono-ish. The bass doesn't necessarily need to be very mono-ish, because it has some higher frequencies in it. Okay, now once we put this, we want to have some sidechain. Now let's take the white noise off this bass, because it's very raspy for this. Now the kick's not in key. You can obviously hear it. So what we're going to do is we are going to put it in key. But pretty much the thing I wanted you guys to get out of this here is, if I were to use a bigger kick with a big tail, the sidechain's going to have to be more hard, and the bass isn't going to really have that much power. So we need something very small here. Now let's see what key this kick is. It's around the kick of A, so we're going to have to go 1, 2, 3, 4 semitones down, which is not good. I'm just going to show fades to make sure. All right, so now the best way to test this one out would be to be with a sub, because that's usually like the low end part of sound. So we're gonna put a sine. Now, I don't know if you guys can hear this through headphones, but if you guys can tell, you guys can hear the kick and the bass, sub bass. That's usually what's gonna pretty much conflict. So if we take this analogy, this sorry, not analogy, but this rule, into play into anything we make, and we give it some side chain, which is, pretty much a standard thing. I didn't want to make that a tip because I think everyone knows that. Then we can get something kind of like the kick sounds on top of the sub. You can hear the kick and then the sub below it, but you don't hear them fighting. And that's pretty much what you're trying to achieve. So once we have this, the kick and bass aren't fighting at all. Now, the final tip I'm going to give you guys, and we're going to have to duplicate this sub bass for this one, is to always separate your bass and your sub bass from each other. Now, a bass is made up of a couple of layers. It's made up of a sub. It's made up of a low bass, mid bass, or high bass. You can go either way, but it's always gonna have a sub, and that's gonna be the bottom part, which you can hear in cars when you're rolling around. It's the part that kind of makes your speakers just give off a lot of energy, and it's always gonna be needed. So what I mean by removing your low end from your bass is pretty much, let's say if we get this in Juna bass back. What I mean by that is, let's say we have that bass. What we want to do is we want to EQ out the low end part of the bass, and we want to have a specific sub for it. And pretty much the reason we can do this is because the sub is covering the frequencies down there. Like 50.1 around there. So this low bass or mid bass, whatever you want to call it, layer doesn't need to have it. You only want your sub and kick to have those low frequencies. And then even then again, we can even take away some of the sub area from the kick because they're both playing at the same time. But my point here is number 3 is going to be pretty much to take away the bass and make your layers separate. Because now what I can do is, let's say I bring in another bass. Now, if I wanted to, now I can distort the bass without affecting the low end. I can saturate the bass without affecting the low end. I can mix crazy without affecting the low end and do so much more stuff like that. And now if I wanted to, I could over sidechain stuff. I can not really sidechain it that heavily because the low end isn't associated with my top part of the bass anymore. That was sounding horrible there. Fucking wrong key. But as you guys can see, that's because I'm using the A. I was supposed to be a G sharp. Anyways, yeah, there you go. See, it's fucking G sharp. And one of the ways to test this is I always just bump it up. Now, that's the best way to do it, guys. That's the best way to get a low end. You know, if you always have a small kick, big bass, or big bass and small kick, you can never go wrong with that. It's a rule that I got taught by one of my mentors. And it's something that I always noticed in every track out there after he told it to me. Like, if you hear every protocol recordings track that has very progressive feel to it, if there's a sustained bass all the way through, the kick is very snappy, very punchy, but it's not long. It's not a long kick like, don't. You know, it doesn't have a big tail. The only genres that I know of that utilize a big kick with a big tail, and I'm not talking about big room kicks again, is techno, tech house, stuff like that, where the bass comes in like, maybe it's not there all the time. It comes in like, dun, 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 dun. You know, like, it has a lot of big gaps. All right, guys. So hopefully this video helps you guys out. Don't forget the new sound bank is out. Make sure to check it out. Hopefully, I'll make sure to add annotations or some cards so you guys can skip through the stuff that you guys don't want to see. Like the first part, a lot of people wouldn't want to see it. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, and I'll see you guys next time. And if I don't see you, happy Christmas. Hopefully you guys get whatever you asked for, and be grateful for everything, and be grateful for the ability to be able to make your own music. And have a good